Hi. Good afternoon. I'm actually not sure where to pitch in because I have been living in this ever since probably I was a growing up child. Because I was almost born into a microfinance movement. It is the first movement I think in the country. So there are so many issues in this industry. And I think we were just talking about operational type of a part here. They are talking about the difficulties posed by implementing microfinance in probably not the best way when it comes to the development-related mission. So, but there are all kinds of other contextual issues and ideological issues related to microfinance, which, if there are time and if anybody raises some question, we will walk into it. At this moment, I think since we have to probably narrow down some of the things, I can remember when we were talking about microfinancing and development a long time back, in 2004, even before tsunami, when GIZ was trying to form a microfinance department in Kiriwandeniya University, I was asked to make a presentation. And I thought I'd bring some of these things from after 10 years back to this because it's still relevant, I think. I was basically asked to talk about microfinance and using microfinance to come out of poverty. It's a development tool. The issue that I raised at that discussion was that when there are all kinds of people sitting around the table, when we are talking about microfinance, there are all kinds of people that we pull together in a microfinance forum. And we are coming together because we are using a similar tool. It's a tool. And you can pull people who are using knives for different purposes into same forum because they are using that tool. So my question there was that you need to talk not about how to do microfinance best, but why you do microfinance. If you don't really discuss about why you do microfinance and just use some of the skills and techniques of people who have success stories of microfinance and enlarge it to a proportion which is not suitable. Because there are lots of money coming in, or because there are investors who don't have places to invest money, or because there are organizations who don't know what to do with the small NGO that they formed, and you are using this flow of funds and use a tool, and you kill the momentum and you kill the purpose. This is how I see the last 10 years of microfinance development. Because I come from an organization which implemented microfinance for 34 years in this country, which has 100 years of history, legacy in the world for microfinance. And I know for a fact that microfinance works in development. And but it works in development if you position it in a context which has a development objective and development mission. So first, I think before discussing whether microfinance is good or bad in the 21st century, or whether we should move out of microfinance, SME finance because it's a trend now, or whether microfinance helps gender development, whether microfinance helps anything, you need to know where you are locating this, right? So in relation to that, I thought, the way I see it, that there are 3 types of reasons why people do microfinance categories. One is the people who have a development purpose, developmental purpose. It could be gender emancipation, it could be environmental sustainability and ecology and livelihood balancing, it could be nutrition, it could be economic poverty alleviation, but it will be a developmental purpose, and people use microfinance in order to get to their mission. There's another group of people who have a political mandate, because microfinance usually, even today, it's 70 to 80% of the population in Sri Lanka is not very stable income people. So in that scenario, social costs need to be taken care of as mindful politicians who canvass votes. So there are political purpose for using microfinance. Then there is another group of people which I think came prominent with a single model microfinancing with large investment after tsunami, I think in Sri Lanka. If I say, like there were a few commercialized kind of microfinance, but with tsunami there was so much money coming. There were so many entities started graduating, and I think in Sri Lanka the first question forum where people ask, does interest matter? If access is given, was the first discussion started with tsunami. And I think there were very few people who said interest matters. Most of the people said access is the way, so we will go with access. And so this discussion started, and we created a myth to say, people, if we don't go and give money to poor, there is no one else. Therefore, it's correct to give that 70% rate, 80% rate, if that is the market rate. And if we are have to be sustainable. But I can tell for a fact, after implementing microfinance for 34 years, if you get the correct legal framework, which of course in Sri Lanka I think we still have to fight for, but if you get the correct legal framework for you to be sustainable as a model, microfinance with affordable interest rates can still be sustainable and can still give returns on investments. But if you are not asking for fair returns, and if you are really manipulating a market and using that market in order to maximize your profit initiatives, I don't think we should be sitting together in that kind of a forum. So this is basically a different angle that I would like to bring into this. And when it comes to microfinance, like that, this is the delivery side. Borrowing side also, there are vaguely two types of people who borrow. One is the marginalized poor people who have not only access to finance, but also have educational issues, health issues, all kinds of other issues. So they are all around kind of poor people. They are vulnerable and marginalized people. There's also another group of people who have other things but not have access to capital, financial capital. So there are two types of microfinance. So when you borrow from global experiences, you need to know where you are borrowing these things from. So because if you borrow from places where you are using microfinance for vulnerability purposes and adopt it to a place where microfinance is only needed because only money is needed, those are two different contexts that we are talking about. So in one context, probably IT access, digital platforms, mobile banking, quick access, all these things will be possible. But on the other end, you need to really sit down with these people, spend time. These are costs that involve. So you need to really know where you are locating and pitching. And in Sri Lanka, when you are talking about microfinance, although I am coming from SANASA, I wish somebody else said this. I'm sad to say this. But I'm coming from SANASA and I'm saying this. I think somebody, a Sri Lankan, would hear this. Non-SANASA person. Every time we talk about microfinance, we are talking after 1990s. We've been having microfinance in this country since maybe even before SANASA started microfinancing. Right? And if anything to be sustainable, you need to plant it in a place where you understand the context. And I'm sorry because one day central bank delegation came to our development unit came to our bank and was talking to our credit officers and was saying we had a very interesting visit to South Asia and we visited different countries and we visited Grameen Bank and we visited BRAC and we visited various organizations which are internationally marketed microfinance models and said very sad to say that we don't have such models for poverty alleviation in Sri Lanka. In my boardroom, and there were credit officers who were thinking about only credit in my bank who were also saying this. Very sad that Sri Lanka doesn't have models. And if you can remember, there was a banking with the poor network some years back in Sri Lanka. I raised this issue. Find your models here first. and compare and see whether these models work or not. Samadanie has a very interesting model, SEEDS has an interesting model, SANASA has a very interesting model. These models work. And they work because I can tell you that 30 years of microfinance work things and debts help us to develop and graduate a group of people to create banks and insurance companies. So these certain models work. Just because internationally a discourse dies, a model doesn't die. So we have to, while we are bashing microfinance or saying microfinance doesn't work, find which model doesn't work and why it doesn't work. Who created this? Who promoted it? Who wanted to promote it and why they wanted to promote it and why they don't want to promote certain other models. So these are some of the things that we need to look at. So in my opinion, credit is a very good development tool. It shouldn't be just productive credit, just income generating credit. We started not with income generating credit. Poor have to need access, just like middle income people, just like rich people. You need to allow access for whatever the purpose they think. If education is the priority, you need to give credit for education. But you allow it so that sustainable access to credit and proper income generation and proper wealth building in that community is maintained. So you need to have regulations and proper responsible practitioners. And that's my case.
Thank you very much. I think you made a really nuanced case.